Great. Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the beautiful garden center. It's a beautiful day. We're glad you guys could join us for this new meeting. We hope to see you maybe later on today. I'm Dave Johannes. I'm the owner here at Good Earth, and with me today is Ruben Carbajal. Ruben's our head installer. He takes care of all our deliveries. And if you've never had the experience of working with Ruben, I encourage you to at least one time have us install a plant for you as opposed to Ruben doing it, because he is the happiest, greatest guy to work with. He loves his job. He takes great pride in what he does, and he does fantastic work. And we're very proud to have Ruben with us. So he and I are just enjoying our coffee, and we appreciate you guys joining us. So today what we're going to discuss is planting a tree or shrub. Now, for the most part, it's a pretty simple process, but there's some steps that we always want to follow. And the first thing, whenever you're deciding what you want to plant, is to try and choose the appropriate plant for the area. And you have to kind of consider your goal or your pain. I mean, you can look at them one way or the other. I like to look at it as a goal. Are you trying to hide something? Are you trying to screen something? Are you trying to shade something? Are you trying to accent something? What is it you're trying to accomplish? If you just walk into the garden center and see a plant that you absolutely love and have to have, well, okay, that could be your goal, but you at least want to make sure then we pick the appropriate spot. But once you've identified the goal and you come into us and we discuss what the options are, then you need to choose your plant. So the things then you need to go from there is once you've chosen the goal or the pain point you need to accomplish, do you have enough sun or enough shade for the plants? So here at the garden center, there's of course plants that take full sun, plants that take part sun, and plants that take shade. And when you bring us that information, what we'll typically recommend is if you've got full sun, that's 6+ hours of sun a day. So from the morning till mid-afternoon, or from mid-afternoon until sunset. Here at the garden center, the sun rises in the east here. So right now, this location, we would call a full sun to part sun area, meaning this area where we're going to plant is going to get sun until about 2 o'clock in the afternoon until it starts to go that direction. Shade, we consider 4 hours or less of sun. So dappled under some high trees where it's not getting the intense blazing sun in the middle of the day. Somewhere in the middle is your part sun or your part shade. So again, choosing your plants, you want to make sure you choose sun or shade. The third question we're going to always ask you is, do you have deer? It's always a consideration. While you may have deer and you might present a problem, we can always rectify the problem with either netting or deer sprays. But ultimately, we'd rather choose the plant that the deer just aren't going to want to go after, unless you've got fencing, and then you're free to choose whatever you want. And then the fourth thing you always want to consider is, can I get water to this place? Sometimes we go to jobs where we're planting products and there's no water source anywhere near it, and we've planted 5 trees and the people have to then carry buckets out. So you just always want to keep that in mind. How am I going to care for and water these plants? So once we've got all that out of the way and you've chosen the plant, today Ruben and I have chosen this beautiful redbud forest tansy plant. We're going to plant it here in the ground. You need to make sure there's some things you always have. Number one, of course, you need to have the plants. Number 2, you need a shovel. We've got 2 different shovels here. We've got an edging shovel that helps get into the ground a little bit better, and then just a regular spade shovel. You'll probably want a rake. You're going to want a knife or a good pair of pruners, because one part of all of this is always breaking up the root ball, cutting the root ball off. You're going to need a tarp or a wheelbarrow or a bucket, somewhere to put the excess soil that you've taken out of the hole. You're going to need your soil conditioner. And what we always use here in the garden center is bumper crop. And then you're going to want a starter fertilizer, which we're going to put some in the hole and around the hole. And the benefit of the starter fertilizer is it's got mycorrhizae. It's got a rooting hormone, because when we're planting these trees, we're breaking up that root ball. Don't be afraid to rough up the root ball a little bit, because the purpose of the biotome, when we put it in the hole and around the hole, it helps to stimulate new root growth. So that should help overcome any transplant shock we might see. And then, of course, we're going to want to mulch the area because we've disturbed it. And then we got to water the area. So we've taken the privilege of pre-digging the hole a little bit, partly to save some time and partly because here at the garden center, we have nothing but gravel. Now, planting into gravel is not awful because gravel actually drains away. But we do need to condition the soil a little bit more and plant a little higher so it can root in a little bit better. So whenever you're about to plant, the process you want to follow is, number one, choose the appropriate space. But then we're only planting one tree today. But if we're planting 4 or 5 shrubs, you want to make sure you follow the recommendations on the tag or the recommendations we've provided in your spacing. Try not to crowd things too much because otherwise you might just end up creating too much of a barrier that you're just going to be separating in the future. So while you might want to screen something more quickly and plant things much more closely, it may lead to problems in 3 or 4 years that you didn't anticipate. So sometimes you just got to be a little bit patient. So right now what we're going to do is I'm going to have Ruben finish digging the hole that we're going to go ahead and plant into. I'm going to go over the process, and then I'm going to let him explain how he does this. Because he's done this for a very long time, and he's got a high success rate of plants surviving in garden center or in the yards we planted in. So we're going to lay out and space the plants according to recommendations on the tag. Allow room for future growth. So you want to go ahead and finish digging out your soil, Ruben? As we dig, so what we've done, this hole, it's kind of hard to see it, but essentially, this bucket here is a 15-gallon bucket. And what we always recommend is you dig a hole twice as wide as the pot, but only as deep as the pot. You don't need to go any deeper because we're going to backfill. We're actually make sure that plant's a little higher. So we went ahead and dug the hole. We backfilled it with a little extra good soil, again, because we just had a tremendous amount of gravel in here. So we backfilled with a little extra clay, some topsoil, and then he's going to mix in the bumper crop there. Again, we're going to dig the hole twice as wide as the pot, but only as deep as the pot. And then we're going to use 50% of the existing soil that we've taken out of the hole and 50% of some new compost. The new compost we're always going to recommend is bumper crop. If you've never experienced bumper crop, it's a tremendous soil conditioner. We call it black gold. It's really loamy. It's got lots of good compost in it. It's got shrimp shells. It's got lobster compost. It's got chicken manure. It's got a lot of natural organic matter. We've sold this now for 22 years, and people just love it. It's a great foundation for your plants to help get started and get rooted in. So he's going to mix 50% of that in the hole with 50% of the existing soil. I'm going to just let him do his thing for a second here.
Mix the soil. Hi, how are you, everyone? When I dig on the holes, I make a ring with the rest of the soil and then I make an equal balance for all the biotone, garden gold, the bumper crop. When I put add on the bumper crop to the holes, it's very easy for mix. You get it with the shovel, I get it like here, I put it up, I mix it up like this. What's a small barrel?
Talk a little louder.
When I mix the soil, when I add on the bumper crop, see, it's very easy for mix top and the top, the holes, and then look like so rich soil. See, like half and half.
Right, and that's the medium that the roots are going to grow into. I mean, you're going to, in your situation, you're going to more than likely have a lot more clay, which is fine. I mean, clay is a fine thing for plants to grow into. It's not, native plants will naturally grow into the clay around here. I mean, we want to always give them a foundation because we don't want to put something in there and immediately expect it to grow into a harder soil. Slowly over time, they will root in rather quickly.
So when the holes is ready for planting, this is the biotone. I use a cup. When I use a cup, I put it around to the ring, and then in the bottom to the holes.
And on the biotone, there's instructions depending on the size of the container you're using. It's an organic, all-natural product. So follow the recommendations on the bag But if you put a little extra in there, it's not going to harm the plants in any way. I certainly wouldn't spill the entire bag in there. We've got an 18-pound bag. For a tree this size, a couple of cups is really all you need.
So when the holes are ready, I got all the rich stuff already in the hole. We take the tree. I find the best view. So for the walkway or in the corner to the house, or whatever you want to put in front to face it up as the best view. And then tilting the tree. Tilting the tree kind of close to the holes. I got it very under to the trunk. I take it slowly. Take out the bucket.
Yep. So look at all the roots down here. So we've got a nice cylinder here, which is good. These roots are very, you got lots of nice white roots in here, so it's got nice new healthy root growth on it. But this is, sometimes you're going to get these roots, and they're going to really, if it's been in the pot for a while, it's going to be circling. It's going to be girdling inside the pot. And that's not an awful thing. It just means it's been in that pot for a while. But we need to break that up. What we don't want is we don't want a black hole. We don't want to plant this cylinder as it is in this hole. We need to release some of the roots so they can move out, because we see a lot of plants that come back that maybe have died, and a lot of times they'll have pulled the plant out and it's still the perfect cylinder from the top to the bottom flat. And it just means that the plant never rooted in, it just was its own little black hole, and so it never had any ability to find its own water. We need to open it up so the plant can get out and find its own water. I always tell people, we want these plants to become independent. Otherwise, we just have another dependent child we're taking care of all the time. We don't want that. We want to make sure, you want to make sure you're not watering this thing every day, all summer long. So Ruben will go ahead and I'll show you what he's doing to cut things up.
Okay, so when I take out to the bucket, usually I use a pruner because I use like reverse size. So, and then I open up the root ball. So I do it any ways possible.
Yeah, we get that all opened up. You can even kind of break up some of this stuff right in here. I mean, I'm feeling these right down there. There's some pretty heavy roots there. So, we can go around here. You can go up to almost a third. If it's really root bound, go up about a third of the way if you need to break it all up.
The root in the bottom is already breaking up.
Exactly. So he's already loosened those up.
So, and then when you're doing on the side,
yep.
See, open up.
There are some plants, when you pull them out of the pot, you'll be able to tell that it's not a cylinder. So if you start to pull it, like a lot of rose plants, because they plant them just in one season, they haven't been in the pots very long, you're not going to necessarily get a lot of circular roots that are going to hold all the soil together. So you might immediately start getting things to break apart. In that case, don't spend a lot of time breaking things up. I mean, this is a good example of a little 3-gallon pot. That's the same thing. You just would break this up, but again, we've got a nice cylinder here, and you would just break all this stuff up on the bottom. Right now, like all the new hydrangeas we've got in, typically if you pull those out, the soil's very soft, so you actually need to be careful in laying it in. You're not going to have this perfect cylinder.
Let me show you what, with this small plant, one trick when this coming like kind of like not too many roots, usually put in my hand close to the trunk. I put it the other way like this. It's kind of easy. And then I put the root ball. I get it here. See? With my hand.
Yep.
So break it up.
Okay. Yeah, don't be afraid to be a little rough with the roots. I mean, it's okay, because the more you open it up, the more it's going to root in quicker. We don't want to beat the thing up, but we certainly don't need to be as careful as a lot of times people are. I mean, that's why we're going to use that biotone. It's going to help it root in very, very quickly.
Okay, so the tree is already for put into the holes. So the good thing is when we put in the holes, so the holes is twice bigger, and then we need the trunk really in the middle, because then it's good balance for the same choice for all the root ball. So for putting, that's in case the tree is kind of heavy, coming to the edge, use the leg. I use the snip pad. I put it close by to the hole. Then I come in like in this position, slowly, and then the tree is inside.
And it's hard to see from here, but well, because he's got his dirt up around the edge. We always want to plant the plant high. We never want to go low. We have a statement here: plant it high, watch it fly. Plant it low, watch it go.
Yes.
A plant will slowly suffocate if we get it too low. So this area right here, this is called the crown of the plant. This area here, we want above the grade. So our grade is right here, actually. So he's about an inch above the grade, which is perfect. And then we're going to bring our soil up to it. See that? See how we're above the grade? That's what we want. We don't want this area below. We don't want to start piling dirt on. It slowly starts to rot, to bark around the plant. And these plants, I always like to use the example that the bank, when you go to the bank and you see all the plants that they planted, the azaleas or the spirea, and they've got about 4 inches of mulch sitting underneath it. You can see some branches, but the plant's very sparse. There's hardly any leaves on it. Well, it's slowly suffocating. And you know, a lot of times you see it in the garden center, we just ask people, please just pull all the mulch back and you'll start to see it breathe and open up again. So he's got this at a great level.
Definitely. So when this is already like here, and then I break it up a little bit at the top too again, making sure.
Beautiful.
So making sure, use a little bit at the top. Okay, so now it's ready for putting all the soil already as I mixed it up. So fill it up, making sure. And then I pressure a little bit, take the air pressure, and then the tree is kind of safety, just in case it's the windy or too much rain, so the water is not holding too much water. Because overwatering is no good.
Correct.
So now I give it up. They use the shovel.
So as he's backfilling this, there's a plant here to my right that we're going to show you. We don't sell these very often. The plant itself is cephalotaxis. The purpose of this is called a B&B or balled and burlap plant. This is a 3-gallon pot. This tree came out of a 15-gallon pot. I don't know if you can see this over here to my right. That's a 20-gallon pot. A balled and burlap plant means they've actually dug it. It was grown in the field. They dug it out. They wrapped it in burlap and did this. And it's a great way to plant. But the thing is, you're not going to necessarily need to break up this root ball. When you plant this, you're going to literally cut the rope off of it or string on it. You do not want to unwrap this. So get it all situated like you would here. Put the plant in the hole. Then you cut the rope off and you untie the burlap that's up around the crown of the plant. Again, exposing the soil that's up here. There's going to be metal on the bottom of it. The metal and the burlap we want to leave on. Sometimes these things start to fall apart very quickly, and we want to make sure that doesn't happen to you. So just the burlap will slowly desiccate and go away. The metal itself is not going to hurt anything. So just put the whole thing in the hole, take the string or rope off, and just untie the burlap and open it up. You can leave it in there and then just backfill on top of it. That way you don't lose this thing, because these things tend to fall apart, especially if they've been in the garden center for a while. He's doing a good job of backfilling this.
The other thing is very important. So we need to check the tree. We need to check like north and south. So we need like a nice balance for the tree in the future. So straight. So I tie to the right. And then I tie to the left. And then I come and check like east and west. So you need to see the tree is leading down a little bit. So it's a tiny bit, like half an inch. See, when that's holding safety, and then the tree is, that's ready.
Looks good?
Yeah.
So this is a Cereus forest pansy, a redbud, the forest pansy. This time of year, any of these trees that are typically red in the spring and fall turn this green if they get a lot of sun. So this tree will actually slowly start turning back its red, and then it's lose its leaves. Things like Japanese maples, they all turn green in the summertime. But this is a beautiful springtime blooming tree. Look at beautiful pinkish purplish flowers on it. Comes out very red. It's a lovely tree. We're planting it here to give it a little bit of shade in the corner. It can get 12, 15, 18 feet tall. A tree like this can be planted in a little bit of light shade, like on the edge of a forest or something, where maybe it gets 4 or 5 hours of sun. You see a lot of these planted along the ICC, actually. It's a beautiful tree. Number of varieties. We've got a couple of them here on hand right now. And again, if you have any questions, make sure you type them in to the group chat. Rachel will bring them out to us and we'll be happy to answer them. If this is a daunting process for some people, we understand that. And if it is, here at the Garden Center, we do offer an installation service. That's what Ruben does for us. So any of the plants we sell here, aside from annuals, we can install for you. 1 gallon perennials, 3 gallon perennials, 3 gallon trees and shrubs, up to 20, 25 gallons. You just come into the Garden Center, you choose the space where we're going to install it, we give you a flag, and then Ruben, within a couple of weeks, comes over and takes care of it for you. You get a 3-year guarantee on all the full price trees and shrubs that we install here at the Garden Center. So he's done a nice job here. Once we get all this cleaned up, we're going to end up mulching it. And the mulch you use is really preference at this point. I mean, typically you don't want to use a lot of hardwood mulch if you're putting it up against a house that has a lot of wood. We don't see hordes of termites in our hardwood mulch or in anybody's hardwood mulch, but if it does happen, it happens in hardwood mulch. So if you're going to be up against the foundation of a wooden house, you probably want to use cedar or pine, something that they don't like to go into. But for our sake, we're just going to use the hardwood. Looks like he's going to finish up a little biotone around the top, which is the perfect thing to be doing. And right, we're going to keep it around this area where this is the area we're going to be watering. That original cylinder is what we're going to be watering. But when we do come in and water here in a few minutes, we're going to water that original cylinder, but we're going to slowly start watering the outside edge. And the reason is, we again want this plant to look for water. We don't want to have another dependent child in our yard. We want to make sure that this plant becomes independent. So this time of year, right now it's 75 degrees, it's beautiful. We had a really good amount of rain Thursday night, part of Friday, and we really haven't watered very much here at the Garden Center now in 2 days. Yesterday was a little cloudy, which helped. But with the temperatures being modest, the air being light at the evening, not too much wind, you know, we might water this thing every 3 days at this point. We'll let it get a little bit dry. You want to let it get a little bit dry, then we want to water it well. And we'll show you what we mean by watering it well here in a few minutes. If you notice it, and it gets hotter again, I mean, it is September, and every now and then we get the September 90-degree surprise. We get into a dry stretch, you might need to water it every other day. A tree like this will wilt a little bit just because of the stress of the transplanting. It doesn't necessarily like it, but don't worry about that. Typically, that's why we say water it well every 2 to 3 days. But if it's hot, you might need to go out and water it every 1 to 2 days. Over the course of the weeks, every day gets a little shorter. Every week gets a little cooler. By probably sometime in October, you might be watering this once to twice a week, depending on rain. A quick thunderstorm doesn't necessarily rain or water a plant like this. So, you know, an inch a week is what most plants need. So, you know, kind of calculate that. You were going to say?
So everything is all dependent weather, because it's very important, because sometimes, you know, the weather says to be a lot of rain, you will leave us, you stay inside to the house, you think it's a lot of rain, or sometimes it's like sprinkle rain. So they can choose about the balance. He is no, it doesn't catch not too much rain, or it's kind of too only a sprinkle. So we need to get a little bit extra, because usually he needs the good balance for the water.
Right.
So there's something that's very important. So this is the root ball for the plant.
Yep. See, there, he's showing you the top of the plant again. That's not any new soil. That's just the existing root ball. That's exactly what we want.
Yep.
We've brought our soil up to the root ball, and then we leave this open. So this is, you can see these nice roots here. That's what we want to protect. We don't want to start burying this. And we're going to put some mulch on top of this, but we don't want to start, you know, piling up soil here, because it just leads to that slow suffocation.
The very important, the mulch is only for look beautiful the plant. Mulch does not make a difference, like help the plant. So it's for look nice and beautiful the garden.
Yep.
So close to the trunk, usually like this, I sprinkle a little bit like this, and then I cover only the top for look nice and beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, mulch is, it's an aesthetic. It does hold moisture in. it does keep weeds out for a period of time, but weed seeds blow around. They're going to end up getting into your mulch, and you're going to get weeds in there at some point.
Out to the root ball, usually use 1 inch. That's in case when you overwater it or help a lot of the weed. So I try to keep like the 2 eyes bigger from the hole. So I made 9 round, because always I say when I make nice and round, I want to leave them ready for the pitch and look beautiful. Because the goal we need and we like is when the customer, you are happy. I feeling so good because I say you're doing a good job. So, and then I can make it up.
Beautiful.
See? So nice.
So typically at the garden center and in our landscape division, we do have a full-scale landscape division that does retail design and installation. And unless a customer really insists, we typically will not stake a newly planted tree. And the reason is the wind and the movement of the tree. I mean, this has got a pretty heavy root ball as it is, so the likelihood of this blowing over is very, very, very low. But we do have some taller trees here. But the movement actually causes the tree to want to look for stabilization. So it actually roots in quicker. If you stake it, if you go back to the same theory as the water, you've kind of created a lazy tree. It doesn't have to work very hard. But by moving around and feeling the stress of the wind, they tend to want to hold on. They put the roots out a little quicker. And that's why we've dug that hole twice as wide for it to start really rooting in.
Okay, so the other, the very important, because here is the bed for the garden. So we leave in the mulch, like kind of nice and even, because you know, they're gonna look so bumpy. So when this, for example, we planting any trees in the grass, and then usually I make the nice edge. Usually I use like 2 inches. The thing we need, when we're doing the edge, we're not doing it straight. We're supposed to do it like angle 45, because for erosion or for the soil, it's kind of like when you step in the edge, so you don't stop the edge. When because it's kind of good support, and that look beautiful. When that's in the grass, I leave it like so beautiful.
Yeah, so he's leaving that edge. But if it's in a garden like this, we're just going to mulch up to it.
Yeah.
You want to avoid, you also every now and then see the Mulch Volcano where they've created this mound of mulch out here that kind of slopes back in with the idea that it's helping to water the plants. You see that in a lot of developments. We don't recommend or encourage that at all. Just a nice healthy dose of mulch. He's got a nice 2 inches out here. He's got a nice layer up here. That's just, again, for help to keep some erosion control and keep some moisture in there.
Because usually when there's too much mulch close to the plant, sometimes you see like fungus, because the plant he breathe all the around for the root ball. So like that is so nice. After we take care of all the planting, it's very important. Use the hose.
Low and slow.
On.
That's all right. And just make sure we don't knock the people over.
Okay, so it's very good to use the sprayer because the water is kind of like not strong like with the like all pressure, and then we need to get it all the around to the ball.
Yeah, nice and slow. Remember that root ball was that deep, and what we need to do is get water to this level. That's why I say a thunderstorm typically won't get there. I mean, we've got this nice loose soil around there, so water will get down there, but we don't want to. Let me back up 1 second. One thing you do, if you're unsure whether your hole drains well, like if you start digging and digging, and you've got a lot of compacted soil, before you plant there, I would recommend putting a bucket of water in there and seeing how fast it drains. And the reason I say this is from first-hand experience. I've got a new house, and I planted a hydrangea tree at the bottom in a nice spot, and it was compacted soil all the way around, but it was clay. We amended the soil, we put it in there, I watered it, it was hot. I came home, it was a little wilty, I watered it again. Someone who was at my house saw it wilty, he watered it again. My wife watered it again. This is over 3 days. And what was happening is the plant was actually drowning. The soil, when I went to take the tree out a week later, because it was so wilty, there was still water in the bottom of the hole. And when I put water in that hole after I took the tree out, the water stayed there for 2 days. So every now and then, it's not often, every now and then you get into a situation where you can kill the plant by too much water. Typically, if we see problems with the plant, it's underwater. So he's watered it nice and slow and carefully. What I technically tell people is like, look, 10 to 15 seconds on, and then let it settle in. 10 to 15 seconds on, let the water settle in. Like he was doing, going around the edge, we want that water not to only be in the cylinder, but on the outside edge as well. Slowly. And if you're unsure, call the garden center. We'll always give you guidance on, how much to water. But again, this time of year, we're going to probably water this thing every 3 days or so. We're right in the front of the store, right by the Glen Road's here, Falls Road here. So if you want to come and check on our work and make sure we did okay, we're open to all advice. Rachel, do we have any questions?
Yes. Okay, I'll read them to you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can. Sure, go ahead.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so first one is from Mildred. She says, how early in spring should one plant? Is there a temperature threshold?
Well, you don't want to do it when the ground's frozen solid because then the tree won't really do anything. I'm going to answer the question in reverse. This time of year, we get a lot of concern about when's it too late to plant? Well, we tell people typically around here, we can plant into late December. As long as the ground's not frozen, we can plant into late December. Usually we'll start planting mid-March. I mean, it just depends on the winter we have. If we've got a hard winter and the ground's really frozen solid, you're really going to need to wait till that ground softens up. I mean, every week, it's the reverse of now. Every week in the spring, the days get longer, every week gets warmer. So, that soil is going to give up probably by mid to late March where it's not frozen. So typically, I think your safe time is mid-March, right? We really don't start any installations till mid-March. Thanks for the question.
Yeah, and Karen asks, what time of the year is the best time to plant trees and shrubs, in your opinion?
That's a great question. So again, we get that asked all the time. The fall is by far and away the best time to plant. You can plant anytime from late February, March, up until December, but the fall is the best time. Because as I said before, every day gets a little shorter, every week gets a little cooler, and the plant is going to keep on looking for water and rooting, but it's going to have less stress. I mean, when we plant in the dead of summer, which we can do, you just have more chance of stress in the plant because of the watering situation. I mean, we plant trees and shrubs 4 to 5 days a week from May until now. I mean, right now we're booked out 3 weeks for our installation. And it only gets busier. So the fall is the ideal time. Again, less stress on the plant. You're not going to have as much time to enjoy it. This thing's going to start losing its leaves here in the next month. But next year, it should be rooted in nicely, be a nice, healthy plant, and leaf out. First, it'll put its flowers out, then leaf out, and you'll have it in your yard to enjoy as opposed to coming in next spring to buy it and letting it bloom for us, then you plant it. Anything else on that?
Something is like very important too about the fall. Just in case you have a perennial or something is coming too big or you want to transplant to, the best time is in the fall because it's the moisture. It's very important, yes. The moisture and no stressy. And when you take out, try to do it carefully, almost the root ball you keeping, so it's less stress for the plant. So when you take it, use a tarp or something cover up, use a stream or something, take it slowly, come into the holes, put in the scenting, bioton, a bumper crop, mix it up, and not leave it too deep, a little bit up. So when you transplant the plant, I say yes, guarantee life.
Yep.
So.
Yep. All right, any other questions?
Yes, we have a couple more. So Paul asked, can compost from my own pile be substituted for the conditioner?
Sure, yeah, that's fine. Just make sure it's composted well. You don't want to put anything green in there. I mean, green, if it's composted nicely, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we only recommend bumper crop. That's what we have here, but bumper crop is just another version of a compost. Yeah, certainly. You still want to use some of that native soil. Don't put it all in compost. Mix it 50-50.
Okay, Ruth asks, as the soil settles with watering, does more soil need to be added?
Well, no, because as you saw, I mean, the answer can be yes, but as you saw, Ruben gently compacted the soil all the way around. So unless we didn't put an appropriate amount of soil, you could certainly come back in and put a little more soil around there. But typically you won't have that. I mean, having that little bit of differential between the top of the root ball and the ground, the mulch will fill in, because mulch itself will slowly decompose. So you could keep an eye. If you see too much of depression, certainly you can come back in and put a little, you could even put a little leaf humus, you have some extra bumper crop, some other garden soil just around the top. That's fine. So it doesn't happen very often, but yes, if you do see too much settling, you want to do come back in and put some soil in it.
The other thing too, so is very, very important. So when the soil is very, very clay, so and they can use like a balance, 50% bumper crop, and then with the clay soil we mix. So when the soil is like so good, like black, like an up-top soil, and then we use a bumper crop only like 1/4, so like not too much, little bit, because too much compost is not good for the tree too, because sometimes it's the nest for the lot of bug, he coming close to the tree. When you put in too much or you put in balance, perfect, that's good.
That's right.
Yep.
Yep. All right, thank you for that question.
Karen asks, how long in the fall and winter do you need to continue watering?
Well, that's a good question. That's kind of up to Mother Nature. I mean, you know, if let's just say for now, if it doesn't rain at all, I would water this thing, you know, every 2 to 3 days for the next couple of weeks, backing off to maybe every 1 to 2 days during the week. And as it loses its leaves, its demand for water falls off. But if you got into November and it was really hot and dry, which can happen, you'd probably want to go out and give it a good soaking once a week. By the time you start getting into December, unless it's still warm and dry, you're really off the hook at that point. I mean, typically I would tell people, we planted this today, September 13th. I would think by the end of October, we don't have to water this thing at all anymore. I mean, unless the entire month of November was really warm and dry. But then I would just come out and just try and make sure it's not too dry, because, you know, once it's rooted in, it's actually got, you know, there's a lot of moisture in a lot of the soil around here. So the clay holds moisture in there. And that's why when you take it up, typically clay's got a lot of moisture in it. It's just hard for the roots to originally get in. So it's really up to Mother Nature. But I think a tree like this, you probably need to water for another 5 to 6 weeks, and that's depending on the rain. If it rains every other day, you're off the hook altogether. So I would think just by the end of October, you're pretty good.
Okay, from Alan, we have, if you are transplanting an existing small tree or shrub, when is the best time, fall or spring?
The fall is the best time, because that's what I said before. So the fall is coming cool down, and then the plant is almost ready for the sleep for the winter. You lose all the leaf, and then you transplant that. The very important for the transplant is about when you dig it up, trying to take with the whole root ball. That's it, the goal.
Get as big a root ball as you can.
Yes, because when he take out and loosen too much, it's hard for guarantee life. So the shrub or the tree or forever, and then the fall is the best time.
Yeah, at some point, I don't remember, Rachel can let you know, there is a whole program on putting your garden to bed. And it's about pruning, but it also might include some dividing. So at that point, you know, when pruners are really just about done for the season, you might not cut them back to the ground all the way. You might at that point go ahead and, as Ruben said, dig them up, get the biggest root ball you can, and then start dividing them, and then divide them for next spring. Get them in the ground now. Because once all the leaves are gone, all the top is gone, if it's a deciduous tree or herbaceous, it's still looking for water. The plant's still rooting around. It doesn't go entirely to sleep. It just doesn't have as much to have to feed on top. It's got a lot less needs at that point, but the roots will still root around. So that's why the fall is a really nice time. because again, you're not getting into the heat of the season, you're getting into the cooler part of the season. That's a good question. Thanks.
Okay, Denara asks, in our backyard, there are big old evergreen trees slowly dying and dropping branches. Is it possible to replace them with new ones?
Yes. I mean, you can always remove old trees. I mean, you could always first, if you brought some pictures in, we might be able to help you from here. Sometimes, let's just say, for instance, old azaleas, they start to get overgrown, they start to get thin. We'll first ask people to make sure it's not over mulched. But then sometimes you just need to do what's known as a renewal pruning, where you just cut the thing back really hard, and then you fertilize it with something like Hollytone or Plant Tone. We always use all the Espoma line of organic granular fertilizers. I'd first that, but you certainly can remove the old trees and then just start over. You're going to lose time. I mean, if these trees are 5-6 feet tall, you know, it's just about buying time. But the fall is a good time to do that. And if that's something you're interested in, the garden center, we don't remove plants, but our landscape division certainly can help you with that. And if you just want to contact Rachel, we can get your information and have them get in contact with you. Absolutely.
Okay, Kate asks, if water does not drain from a hole in clay, what is the solution?
Well, plant it higher. I mean, you can, again, so going back to my story, I removed that tree and didn't plant anything there, but in the same environment, I did plant some other hydrangeas. But essentially, I planted these trees at the beginning of August, and I've never watered them, and they're doing fine. So I know that whatever rain's getting in there isn't necessarily going away, so it's not filling up with water. But typically, we would tell people, like if Ruben were doing it, and it was a hole that maybe it's really rocky and we can't get down, we're going to plant it higher. You're going to put more compost in there so the water can drain away. We just don't want it sitting in there all day. So you might bring it up, and then we just might have to make a bigger mound. I mean, you do see this every now and then. You just bring a bigger mound of soil up. So instead of leaving it an inch or so out of the ground, we might leave it 3 inches out of the ground and then just bring a mound up to it. So, but if it's really something that never drains, you probably just don't want to plant there. Thank you.
Okay, Colby asks, is there anything different / additional tips for planting on a slope?
I'm going to let Ruben take that one. Planting on a hill?
Oh, it's very, very, very simple. Always it's like a balance. So when that's the hill, so always the plant is supposed like inch or inch and a half above to the ground. You usually taking the bottom to the hill because in the top it looks like deep, but because we need to put it straight, when the bottom is a little bit high. So and then I made nice edge. And that's in case I made like little rings sometime in the bottom for holding a little bit of water, because when you put in the water, it's too in like that, and the water is, boom, is going out.
Right.
So typically, always is about the balance.
Yeah.
So
I mean, what he's saying is that you got a hill, dig into the hole, the root ball might be a little bit below the grade of the hill coming down, but on the balance side, it's going to be above, and you're going to bring more soil up to it. You don't want to plant down to the lower part. You want to kind of keep it in the middle. And then what he's saying is keep a little bit more soil and mulch on the downhill side, because in an environment like this, it rains. We're on a slight slope here, but most of the water is going to rest in here. On a hill, it may just run down, and all that beneficial rain you were hoping would water your plant isn't watering it, it's just going down. So we're going to try and hold some of it back so it then gets into our plant. But so yeah, you can plant. I mean, on a 25-degree slope, no, I wouldn't plant. But you know, an average hill that you can walk up and down, yeah, you can certainly plant that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Layla asks, will adding fertilizer in the fall make the tree grow instead of going dormant?
Well, there's two answers to that. So if you're fertilizing now, and there's depending on the types of trees or plants you're doing. So if you're talking about a tree like this, we wouldn't fertilize. If it weren't newly planted, I would fertilize this in a couple of weeks. There's no real reason to do it now. I mean, you can do it anytime. It's just going to help get better roots, and it's establishing itself for next year. The answer to the question is you can get more growth. Most of the growth by now is hardened off, so it's woody. But if we planted this and we fertilized the heck out of it and it shot up all this new growth, well, once we get our first hard frost, most of that new growth just it's not hardened off, so it'll just burn and fall off. So it's no harm to the plant, but you've really just wasted the fertilizer. It's not done anything. Most plants this time of year, every day gets shorter, every week gets cooler. You don't get a lot of growing. What we're trying to do is grow down below. We're not going to get a lot of growth up top here. You're going to get some because it's still in the early part of September. It just depends on the plant. So like annuals, great. I'd still fertilize them. You know, if you have vinca, petunias, salvia, any of that stuff, you got a good 4 or 5 weeks of good life in those. I'd keep fertilizing. Things like evergreens, I'd probably wait. There's no real reason to do it now unless you just have nothing else to do. You're not going to get a lot of new growth out of them. So, but if you happen to, it's just not going to have a chance to harden off and just burn off. You see that in the springtime, we get stuff from the nursery. This happened to us this spring. They'll fertilize the shrubs before they send them out. That's why we don't need to really recommend fertilizer except the rooting hormone fertilizer in the beginning, because they come to us fertilized. Well, you'll see all this new growth. In this past spring at May, Mother's Day's weekend surprise, a lot of plants, the new shrubs, all the new growth just got burned by the hard frost. It doesn't kill the plant. It just makes it unsightly. You got to snip it off, and then you might fertilize it again at that point, and you'll start getting your growth out of it. So thanks for the question.
Okay, so the last one is from Shanti. It's, can you recommend a good shrub to plant around fences?
Well, there's a lot more questions involved with that, and what I'd encourage them to do is to maybe call or come up here. It depends on what you're trying to do. A loud motorcycle. I mean, are you trying to hide the fence? How tall do you want the plant to be? Is it sunny? Is it shady? I mean, what's the purpose of the plant you want to put by the fence? I mean, if you're just looking to put something along a fence that's pretty, you certainly could put a row of boxwoods. But the first question would be, are you trying to hide the fence, or are you just trying to accent the fence? You want to make the fence stand out, or you want to make it disappear? So that's a question better answered in person or over the phone, or even by email. But I'd encourage you just to call the store. It's easier to answer. We can, if you send Rachel the phone number, we'll be happy to give you a call and answer that for you. Thank you. Any other questions right now?
No, that was the last one. So if anyone has anything else, I'd write it now. Otherwise, if you have any other comments, yeah.
Any last words?
I can say something about I love when he say fertilizer. So the plant, like evergreen or anything, almost when we put in mulch, I see in some house when I come, put a fertilizer in the top to the mulch. So that's no completely no good, no follow the rules. It will open up, break it up the old mulch because it's a little bit, and then because usually we have like almost from the stone organic fertilizer. So depend the size, and then put it around, and then when you put in all the fertilizer around, and then you can put in the mulch again in the top, because when you put in the water, it's holding the fertilizer right there. It's very important. So when you put in the water, and the fertilizer almost is there. So it's about rain, or when you put in water, so it not disappears, stay close to the plant. So that's what I want to say. So
good. Yeah, good point.
Yep.
Well, we thank all of you for joining us. We've appreciated the time you've shared with us. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to come on in any day. We're open 9 to 5 Monday through, I'm sorry, we changed this week. We're open 9 to 5 today, starting tomorrow 9 to 6, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, Saturday and Sunday. We always have someone here who can help answer your questions. And that, that's what we love to do. We love helping you guys succeed in your garden. So we thank you for joining us today, and have a great day, and we hope to see you soon. Thank you.